Today we are beginning, last Sunday we had our New Year's message, but which was the typical let's change everything and turn and make our lives mean something for the Lord Jesus, for time and for eternity. Today we're going to go back a step and say, well, what are things we should maybe avoid? And Psalm 51 is the passage. Our title this morning, Broken! Exclamation mark. It's a key thing to progressing. You need to be broken first. My father felt that when I was young, and he felt this with all his children, he said we need to break their will. Now, I was strong-willed, but he broke my will, and the way he broke it was massive spankings. And he was very strong. He'd been a wrestler in college, so he could really send me flying. In fact, I think he had to help hold me with one arm so I didn't just fly away. But I would get spanked, and very strong. And then he would do this. He would say, now stop crying. And he would shake me, which hurt worse than the spanking. And stop crying. See, it's your willful. You're stop crying. So boy, I tried to stop crying. Well, what did that do? It broke my will. And sometimes we, I saw, in fact, even last week I was, had to intervene in a problem between a person, it was actually another group, and the young person had never, his parents just let him do whatever, and he was told that was the wrong thing you did, and boy, he was ready to take a swing at the guy. Didn't want to be told anything. And the guy was like 10, 20 years older than him, but he was ready to go. And so sometimes we need to reach that point where we're broken. David, in his early life, everything was his way. There's a giant, and the giant's name is Goliath, and David comes out there. He came out to see what was going on in the battle. He was kind of interested. He was tending sheep, and his brothers were fearful, and every time that giant would sound, it would be like thunder, just all over the place, and everybody would cower because of the giant's strength, his height. He was 8 foot something, very tall. There was a race of giants that lived there in the Middle East that were always a problem, and in that what would be today the Gaza Strip. And there he was, and it was miserable for them all. And David comes and says, why are you all afraid of that giant? Don't we have a stronger God than him? And the answer is, yes, we do. We have a stronger God. And so David said, I'll fight the giant. So he was given all this armor by the king's own armor. And David was a kid, and he goes like, I can't even like move this sword and all this. And he says, I can't move in the armor. And he took it all off, just wore his regular shepherd clothes, and he then got his 5 smooth stones. And people say, well, why did he get 5 smooth stones? Why not just 1 stone? There was 1 giant. You know why? The giant had 4 brothers. David was going to get rid of them all. They were all bad. Now, there comes the giant says, oh, you're bringing a little dog out to me. I'm going to feed him to the birds. And David says, you may come with strength and with great weapons and power, and you've probably been in the military 30-some years. He says, but I come in the name of the Lord. And he swings his little slingshot right there and gets where there's no armor, right in this little area. There's a little area of no armor right there, and it knocks the giant down. And then he takes the giant sword, which was, they said, as big as a weaver's beam, which is large, and he takes that and he chops off the head of the giant. Of course, everybody cheers. From Israel, all the Philistines all run away. David's a big hero. And then God has him anointed king to succeed Saul. Saul had failed in many ways. David becomes king. David is the greatest of all warriors. He goes out, he leads the battle, and then he hits middle life. And some of you, we have a lot of younger people, under 40, under 45, whatever it might be. And you haven't hit that midlife area yet. And David hits midlife, and he starts saying, well, you know, I've been going out to battle for like 30 years now, since I was a little kid. I win them all. He says, this year I'm just sending the troops out. Give me a report every now and again. So David stays back with the women. And that's what we have in 1 Samuel. It says, at the time when kings went out to war, which is springtime, David stayed home. And he says, he's sitting there in his palace, and he's going, well, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. Life is kind of boring. There's nothing to do. He says, I don't think the people appreciate me anymore. I don't feel loved. He says, I'm bored. So he went up on the roof, and he went up. They didn't have computers yet or movies. He says, I'm going to have to watch some live pornography. And I know what time. It's bath time. And his roof was higher than everybody else's roof. And in those days, and still today, you know, in Israel today, the water heater, you know where it is? It's on the roof. It looks odd, but it's on the roof. Of course, my father came home after being there. There it was on the roof. It was so embarrassing. But it was on the roof. So the bathtubs in those days, since they hadn't invented water heaters, they were on the roof. So all day the bathtubs are being warmed, and then as soon as it's dark, bath time. So David goes up, it's bath time. Oh, wow. And he sees a girl, and her name was Bathsheba. Wow, it's got the name right in there. And he sees, and his eyes follow every line of Bathsheba. And then he goes back in after a while of viewing that, and he says to one of his people, he says, you know, there's a lady down the street. Can't miss it. House looks like this. He said, tell her to come pay me a little visit. So she comes, and David has a little visit with her because he's bored and he's lonely. And he's worked hard. He's worked hard for a long time. He deserves a break. The problem is, God observed that. And then a little while later, Bathsheba sends him a letter, says, guess what? You're going to be a father. And David goes, oh no, that's not good. And so David says, what's this lady's husband's name? Where is he? Well, he's one of your mighty men. He was a Navy SEAL. That's what it would be today. The mightiest men, which are like the Navy SEALs today, are the crack troops, the ones you send out first because they are so successful. And he's on that list. I saw the list. It's in the Bible. There's his name. His name was Uriah. And there he was. He's on that list. So he's like one of the best. So David says, bring him back. I want a report of how the battles are going out there. And of course, he really wanted to have Uriah go home. He wanted to cover up the sin. It was a big cover-up. And so David brings Uriah back. And he says, how's things going? He says, I shouldn't even be away from the troops. We're losing. We've not done too well. And I should be back there with them. And David says, well, no, stay. He says, go home. You deserve it. You deserve a break today. And Uriah says, oh, I can't go home with my commander, Joab. He's sleeping out under the stars and in danger at all times. And you want me to go home and be there, you know, and just enjoying the night like nothing's going on, and I'm not like shouldn't be with my fellow troops? And David says, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Go home. So Uriah goes, and David goes up and watches, and he sees Uriah go up, and he doesn't even knock on the door. He sleeps on the front steps of his own home. David says the next morning, tell Uriah to come back, visit me again. Uriah comes back, and he says, Uriah, we're going to have a little party tonight. And come on over. So Uriah comes, and he goes, here, Uriah, have another drink. Have another drink. And then finally says, Uriah, you look drunk. I think you better go home. And so Uriah staggers out the door, and David watches, and he walks up the steps, and he plops over, sleeps on the front steps. Next day he says, send Uriah back up. And he says, Uriah, here is a very important document. He puts a seal on it and says, this is for your commander. Hand it to him alone. Don't let anybody see it. Guard it with your life. The commander opens it. When he gets back, Joab, and it says,